Hola, mi gente. Welcome back for another episode of Level Up, Unfiltered and Unapologetic. I'm your host, Dr. Cristina Dominguez. This week we are talking about when the other shoe drops. I know you know what that feels like. Stick around and we'll talk about it. Okay, mi gente, let's jump right in. This week, I wanted to talk specifically about anxiety. Anxiety is a really common topic, but something that's not commonly discussed about this common topic is the foundation of it. The true understanding of anxiety in itself, the core. What can this feel like? If I can capture this in a statement, it is the rug being ripped out from underneath you. It is something lurking right around the corner and is going to sneak up at you completely unannounced. It is the other shoe dropping. I wanted to capture this in a statement because it's something that's almost a little more understandable, because we know the sensation of when something's right about to come around the corner or something's just about, we're always on edge, anticipating that. So a little fun fact, when I decided to do this topic, it's something super common and I talk about it a lot with my patients, but I looked it up. Where does this, this saying come from? So it's actually originated because of New York City style living. And I can absolutely attest to this. This is 100% accurate. There are certain apartments in New York City that were built back in the day where the bedrooms are stacked on top of each other, floor over floor over floor. So when you hear someone come home to take their shoes off, you hear one shoe coming off, you already know that the other one is coming. So it's a really great visual to kind of capture that sensation, the anticipation of you already know what's about to come up next, and then it happens. So this image is used to describe the anticipation, the predicting of what's coming up next when it comes to anxiety, and that hesitant, you're kind of bracing sensation with the nature of anxiety. So here's the thing about anxiety: we hate it. As human beings, we absolutely hate anxiety. We hate not knowing what's coming around the corner because it makes us feel threatened. This is absolutely a survival tactic. We like living in the know. We know what's about to happen at all times, but we know the unpredictable nature of life. So here's the thing. It's adaptive. When we anticipate or when we predict what might be coming next, it makes us feel comfortable as though we are in control. This is where the mind starts to get creative, and you might find yourself creating the worst case scenario in your mind. That in itself is going to feel as though it's actually happening because your brain doesn't know the difference between something that is imagined and something that is real. So you're going to start to feel the sensation of a threat, of a perceived threat, as though it already happened, even if you're just imagining it here. And again, we do it as a false sense of control, but then it ends up kind of backfiring because then we feel the anxiety as though if it was already happening. So here's the thing about threats. Back in the day where we were physically threatened, when we didn't have the safety in wildlife, when we were hunter-gatherers and when we were living in physically dangerous environments, we had to be very cautious about what literally was coming around the corner, what was going to pop out from behind a tree or a bush. These are real life-threatening scenarios. Current day, we're living in civilizations that are a lot safer. We're not worried about the bear coming from around the corner that's going to threaten our lives. But here's what it is. We are starting to feel that type of response to emotional and mental intangible threats. So this can be like a bullying or certain feedback, making mistakes, messing up in a relationship, at a job, in a performance. We have to be so mindful about how current day threats can be perceived as if it was a real life threatening event, even though it doesn't necessarily equate to your life ending. Our egos and our minds perceive it as though we are going to die. So what does this mean? Our body's going to kick in the survival instinct and we're going to go into survival mode. So what happens when we find ourselves anticipating the other shoe dropping, the rug being ripped out from underneath us at any moment? We're always living life on guard, hesitant, anticipating, preparing. The reason why we use this is because it works. We enable this process because it's something that does keep us safe in the sense of avoidance. So what does this mean, Christina? We are anticipating and preparing ourselves so that we can avoid a discomfort, a piece of feedback, a negative comment, right? But what happens then is that we create such a sterile little bubble for ourselves in which we are free of any type of negativity that now we lost the callus, that thick skin that you develop from encountering something over and over and over. That strength now becomes to soften. So enabling this process, although it feels safe and it feels good and it feels comfortable, it feels void of potential threat. We need to really recognize, what is it that we're doing? We are recreating this bubble of safety for ourselves. So next time you find yourself bracing for impact, I'm going to encourage you to ask yourself 3 things. Number 1, what am I anticipating? When you find your mind kind of like running out of control, spinning out of control, and you're anticipating every single possible scenario, what is it that you're anticipating and what are you avoiding? When we find ourselves planning, preparing, trying to predict, it's because there is a negative perceived outcome at the end of XYZ. And we are trying our best to put in our control avoiding that negative outcome. Whether it's a perceived threat, a death, a failure, whatever it is. We are implementing this formula in order to protect ourselves from that thing. So number 2, I'm going to encourage you to entertain that worst possible scenario. Because again, it's all in our minds. Go with it. Run with it. Take it to the ends of the earth and ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen? If my boss comes and tells me that thing that I'm anticipating that's so bad that scares the crap out of me, what's the worst that's going to happen? The reason why I love this question is because you are questioning your own mind and your ego telling you that you're going to die. Because that is the sensation that's kicked in. Your nervous system starts to go haywire because you are anticipating a perceived death threat. So question it. Am I going to die? What's going to happen if XYZ occurs? Now we are challenging it to the extent of what is truly possible, what is the possible outcome in this scenario, as opposed to the perceived or the imagined one. We all know we have some crazy imaginations, and it's all a protective mechanism. There's nothing wrong about it. We're just trying to stay safe. Survival. We are built and ingrained for survival and evolution. The downside to this, number 3, question your confidence, your trust in yourself. If we are constantly anticipating and preparing and planning, we are not allowing ourselves the opportunity to sit in that environment. If we don't allow ourselves to sit in that, we'll never know what we can take. We're not going to develop our confidence and our trust because we are always cutting off right before we get to that point. We can't prove it to ourselves. You cannot prove your strength to yourself until you are in that hot water. So ask yourself, do I trust myself? Do I have the confidence that if I was in a worst case scenario, that I'll actually survive? What do you think? So here's what I'm encouraging you to do, guys. At the end of the day, balance. It's important to live a preventative life because that is a skill that's going to keep us safe in certain scenarios. So don't take this as don't plan, don't prepare, don't anticipate. Just be selective as to what are the factors I'm protecting or anticipating from. Are they perceived threat? Are they perceived threats? Or are they true threats? This way, we won't spend a majority of our time living in the future, preparing and predicting for everything. We will live proactively with the factors that ask for it, that call for it, but we're not going to constantly be living in that predictive state of in the future. Living in the future is what? Anxiety. Living in the past is depression. Very corny, very cliche, but it is 100% true. If we are living our lives constantly in tomorrow, you're not here. You're not right now. So how do you know what your present focus thinking is? You're not embracing the current moment. Also, as we've talked about before, when you create resistance against something, it's going to push back that much harder. So if we are trying to control the uncontrollable, we're causing resistance. This is what leads to irritability, your mood swings, anxiety, depression. All of these symptoms can absolutely be alleviated by lifting the resistance and allowing the flow to start to open up. I'm going to encourage you guys to use these opportunities to develop that balance. Use it as a call to challenge your resilience. We are resilient human beings. We are built for survival. We are built for evolution. And we just have to find a way to create a little bit more equilibrium between what we perceive as a threat and what is an actual threat. Because at the end of the day, what ends up happening is that we miss out on today because we're so worried and so focused about preventing what might happen tomorrow. I hope you guys liked the lesson for this week. It's so important to understand anxiety at its core so we can challenge it. You don't have to live anxiety every day. All we have to do is understand it and find a little bit of a balance. That way you can live your best life. Mi gente, no se vayan. Please don't go yet. Do me a favor. Like, follow, subscribe. Follow me on all forms of social media. That way you can keep up with the latest level up information. Have a lovely week. I'll see you next time.